The religious establishment, or ulama, remained a powerful force in Iranian society, even as leftist and nationalist movements gained attention. In due course, Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini emerged as a charismatic leader. In the early 1960s, Khomeini forcefully opposed Reza Shah's White Revolution, a series of reforms that included land redistribution, women's suffrage, and secularization. Khomeini's critique was not only political but deeply ideological. He argued that the Shah's policies undermined Islamic values, subjugated Iran's independence, and served foreign, particularly American interests. His exile in 1964 only multiplied his influence, as his writings and speeches circulated widely, blending anti-imperialism with a call for the establishment of an Islamic government. Shah pursued rapid modernization backed by US military and financial support, symbolized by the creation of a powerful secret police, Savak, to suppress dissent. However, his modernization policies increased inequality and isolated traditional segments of society, including the clergy and the rural poor. Culmination of these grievances was in the Islamic Revolution of 1979, a mass uprising that united a diverse coalition: clerics, students, workers, leftists, and bazaar merchants. Under Khomeini's leadership, the revolution abolished the monarchy and declared Iran an Islamic republic. In this video, we will look at how the revolution unfolded. Mohammad Reza Shah's regime became increasingly authoritarian throughout the 1970s. Iran's secret police, the Sazman-e Italayat va Amaniyat Keshvar, Savak, became synonymous with state repression. Created with the help of US and Israeli intelligence, Savak monitored, arrested, tortured, and often executed political opponents. It infiltrated opposition groups, universities, and even mosques, targeting activists, intellectuals, and religious figures. Protesters, including leftist activists, members of the Tudeh party, religious scholars, were subjected to brutal methods of torture. Public trials and executions were used to terrify potential opponents. In 1975, Shah dissolved existing political parties and replaced them with a single state-sanctioned party, the Rastakhiz party. Citizens were effectively forced to join it, eliminating even the appearance of political pluralism. While the Shah's White Revolution brought some modernization, it also worsened social inequalities. Land reforms displaced rural farmers, many of whom migrated to cities, creating urban slums and a pool of disillusioned, underemployed workers. The 1973 oil boom provided the regime with significant revenues, but wealth was concentrated among the elite, deepening resentment among the middle and lower classes. The Shah's cultural policies, including the banning of certain religious practices and the promotion of Western lifestyles, alienated many Iranians. For example, the 1971 Persepolis celebration, a lavish commemoration of 2,500 years of Persian monarchy, symbolized the regime's detachment from ordinary citizens' struggles. Clerics who criticized the regime, such as Ayatollah Muhammad Beheshti and Ayatollah Hossein Ali Montazeri, were harassed, arrested, or exiled. Shah's secularization policies were perceived as an attack on Islamic identity, thereby strengthening religious opposition. Ayatollah Khomeini, exiled since 1964, was building a revolutionary movement from abroad while the Shah tightened his grip on power. Initially based in Najaf, Iraq, Khomeini relocated to Neuf-le-Château, France, in 1978, where he gained significant visibility and influence. Khomeini's writings and sermons framed the Shah as a tyrant beholden to Western powers, accusing the monarchy of betraying Islam and Iran's sovereignty. He portrayed it as a puppet of the United States and Israel. In his seminal work, Hukumat-e-Islami, Khomeini articulated the concept of Vilayat al-Faqih, arguing that a just Islamic state should be led by a qualified cleric. This became the ideological cornerstone of the Islamic Republic. Khomeini's time in France provided a strategic advantage. From the freedom of exile, he used modern communication tools to galvanize the opposition. Khomeini recorded speeches on cassette tapes, which were smuggled into Iran and widely distributed in mosques, bazaars, and universities. These recordings criticized the Shah's regime and called for Islamic unity and resistance. France's accessibility to global media allowed Khomeini to project his message beyond Iran. Western journalists, intrigued by his austere lifestyle and defiance of the Shah, amplified his image as a leader of the oppressed. Khomeini also published letters and statements addressed to the Iranian people, outlining his vision for an Islamic state and urging non-violent resistance against the monarchy. Over time, Khomeini's message resonated across diverse segments of Iranian society, enabling him to forge alliances with groups that shared a common enemy in the Shah. The Ayatollah's religious leadership unified many within the Shia clergy, who saw the Islamic Republic as a means to restore their influence and resist secularization. Traditional merchants and traders in the bazaars supported Khomeini, motivated by economic grievances and shared cultural and religious values. Despite ideological differences, secular leftists and nationalist groups viewed Khomeini as a figure capable of mobilizing mass opposition against the Shah. The Shah's repression and Khomeini's growing influence set Iran on a collision course by the late 1970s. The Shah's inability to address social and political grievances, combined with its reliance on brutal force, isolated key segments of the population, including students, workers, and the religious establishment. Revolution was not a sudden event, rather a series of escalating protests and confrontations between the Shah's regime and the growing opposition. Several key events mobilized the revolutionary movement. The January 1978 Qom protests became a key spark. A derogatory article in a state-controlled newspaper criticizing Ayatollah Khomeini provoked protests in Qom, a center of Shia scholarship. The government's violent crackdown on demonstrators led to deaths and sparked a cycle of mourning protests every 40 days, each larger and more intense than the last. The protest movement spread beyond clerical circles to include students, workers, intellectuals, and leftist activists. These groups, despite their ideological differences, united in their opposition to the Shah. Strikes in key industries, particularly the oil sector, paralyzed the economy and demonstrated the regime's inability to maintain control. On the 8th of September 1978, security forces opened fire on unarmed protesters in Tehran's Jaleh Square, killing hundreds in what became known as Black Friday. This massacre marked a turning point, shattering any remaining illusions about the Shah's willingness to reform and galvanizing opposition across Iran. Nationwide strikes, particularly by oil workers, damaged the Iranian economy. The strikes were coordinated by revolutionary communities. The strikes were coordinated by revolutionary committees, demonstrating the opposition's growing organizational strength. The disruption of Iran's main source of revenue, oil exports, made the Shah's regime increasingly untenable. As protests grew in size and intensity, the Shah's ability to govern disintegrated. Several factors accelerated his downfall. Shah's over-reliance on foreign advisors isolated many in the Iranian military, while rank-and-file soldiers were reluctant to fire on civilians. By 1979, even many apolitical clerics had joined the opposition, encouraged by Khomeini's leadership and the regime's attacks on religious institutions. The Carter administration's emphasis on human rights pressured the Shah to show restraint, limiting his ability to use extreme force. Protests reached an unprecedented scale, with millions taking to the streets demanding the Shah's surrender. Demonstrations included both secular and religious groups, reflecting the breadth of opposition. The military's ultimate failure to uphold the Shah's regime was evident in its behavior during the final days of the revolution. Facing mounting pressure from revolutionary forces and recognizing the inevitability of the Shah's defeat, military leaders declared neutrality on the 11th of February 1979. And ordered their troops to remain in their barracks. This decision effectively signaled the collapse of the Shah's regime, as it deprived him of the final pillar of his power. Revolutionary forces, emboldened by the military's inaction, quickly seized key locations, including Tehran's military headquarters. Weapons seized from military depots were redistributed to revolutionary militias, further consolidating the opposition's power. On the 16th of January 1979, the Shah left Iran, ostensibly for a vacation to seek medical treatment, but in reality, he left behind a caretaker government led by Shahpur Bakhtiar, a moderate nationalist. The Shah's departure created a power vacuum, which was quickly filled by Khomeini and his supporters. On the 1st of February 1979, Ayatollah Khomeini returned to Tehran after 15 years in exile, greeted by millions of jubilant supporters, marked his emergence as the revolution's leader. Khomeini wasted no time in asserting his authority, declaring that the Bakhtiyar government was illegitimate and that Iran's future would be decided by the revolution. Khomeini's return to Iran in February 1979 marked the culmination of years of repression and resistance. His rise to power represented not just the overthrow of the monarchy, but also the triumph of a new ideological vision that would define Iran's future.